What are the needles in Octavius's spine? What happened to his body after the failed nuclear fusion experiment? How much do his manipulators weigh? And how is his body able to withstand such loads? I'll answer these and other fascinating questions about the brilliant antagonist from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 in this video. Don't forget to like the video and enjoy watching. The mad scientist turned into a true monster, but just a couple of days before, he was a loving husband on the verge of a major breakthrough in energy technology. Peter first saw him working on perfecting his tentacles, as we can see from the setup in his lab and those well-known red lights. The next day, Octavius presents his mechanical assistants to the public, 4 devices designed to work in nuclear fusion conditions. Neither heat nor magnets pose a threat to them. The fusion of his body with the tentacles occurs through the implantation of fairly large needles along his spine. As we later learn from the Doctor, these needles initially did not penetrate the spinal canal where the spinal cord is located. The most logical conclusion is that the needles were meant to create an electrical connection with the spinal nerves that branch out from the spine. For Octavius, their importance could lie in transmitting muscle contraction commands to perform movement. And what does Octavius do? Right? He integrates new limbs that also need to be controlled. The spinal cord not only sends motor commands, but also gathers information about external and internal conditions for the brain. This allows Octavius to feel his mechanical arms, sensing things like pain, touch, temperature, pressure, etc. We then see Otto proudly raise his new limbs into the air. Interestingly, each manipulator is located on its own charging station. Of course, the tentacles need power. Just like in some comics, each tentacle likely has its own built-in battery, since there's no visible attachment point. Given that they're made to work in high energy conditions, the scientists surely designed them to recharge during operation. Otto also explains how he controls his manipulators. We understand that the spinal cord merely transmits signals from the brain, and without the brain's involvement, controlling the new limbs would be impossible. Octavius claims that he solved this by integrating nanowires into his cerebellum, which coordinates movement. Here's where the question arises. Is this about a surgery or artificial intelligence? After the inhibitor chip was destroyed, it seems like the scientist's mental state began to deteriorate. As for the reasons behind Octavius's complete mental breakdown, I see 2 main but different causes. First, the tentacles do not impose their will or actions on Octavius. Why would they want anything in the first place? When presenting the inhibitor chip, he mentioned that it protects his higher brain functions. According to some, particularly Western thinkers, higher brain functions include behavioral traits that shape one's social identity, moral norms, ethics, and so on. In other words, an unprotected neural link would activate the instincts versus intellect mode. We know that intelligence is a gift, not a privilege. Considering the aforementioned PTSD, this can lead to serious consequences. The main flaw in this hypothesis is that once we were shown that, with his consciousness disabled, Octavius's manipulators were able to make decisions on their own, like when they killed the medical staff. The second reason seems more plausible and even ironic. During the presentation, Otto himself stated that these 4 manipulators were developed and programmed solely to create a successful nuclear reaction. Thus, every action the tentacles pushed Octavius to take was aimed at building a new reactor. This is, of course, obvious. You know how the energy experiment ended? After being struck by a high voltage discharge, Octavius ends up in the local surgical department. The Doctor notes that the molten metal from the needles had already penetrated the spinal canal, leading to the fusion of vertebrae. He then explains that after removing the devices, they would need to open the spinal canal, assess the damage, and perform spinal fusion to immobilize the lumbar vertebrae. What the Doctor had already confirmed, multiple vertebrae fusions and metal entering the spinal cord, indicates that Octavius's motor function and spine sustained severe damage. Despite this, he remains more than capable of working. Due to the extensive spinal cord damage, some of the neurological functions have been taken over by his tentacles. As long as he has them, he remains physically functional. We don't know what materials the manipulators are made from. In the comics, for example, they boasted a high titanium content, a light and strong metal. But we can estimate how much Octavius's tentacles weigh in Spider-Man 2. And it's pretty clear, given that the scientist's body retains full mobility and functionality. When all 4 tentacles are off the ground, they weigh no more than 20 kilograms. But another question arises: what does Octavius's body feel when he's using them to lift 1.5-ton objects? Immense tentacle strength versus a typical human skeletal system. To protect his spine from such immense loads, Octavius uses something like a heavy-duty weightlifting belt to stabilize his lumbar vertebrae, which bear most of the weight. Let's assume his spine is protected, but what about his legs? Octavius is smart here too. If you watch closely, when he's lifting or throwing heavy objects, his lower tentacles act as stabilizers, staying on the ground. This is evident in scenes where he throws a car or tears the door off a safe with cops, and when interacting with Mary Jane. He doesn't even risk grabbing Aunt May without stabilization, but there are times when he disregards safety protocols, like in the bank when he throws bags of gold, or when he holds Spider-Man mid-air play with all 4 tentacles. For a strong man, holding 100 kilograms on his feet isn't that hard, but the load vector shifts away from him. Let's agree that Octavius is a strong guy, which frankly isn't in question. Subscribe to my channel, hit the like button, comment, and share this video with your friends.